Hi, everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Erin.
And I'm Tiffany.
And we are talking a little bit about Hualien today. Have you ever been there?
I've only been to one of the beaches at Hualien, but it's still very beautiful. I think they have a lot of great scenery there.
Yes.
It's definitely great for like a, short trip to another place of Taiwan if you want to visit somewhere.
Yeah, it is actually a really beautiful part of Taiwan. It's a smaller city, but it's actually quite nice. There's lots of nice restaurants there and lots of art around the city and of
it's
course
relaxing too.
Yeah, of course the areas around Hualien are beautiful as well. The mountains areas, Taroko Gorge is pretty close by, and of course it's on the coast, so there's beautiful beaches to visit. But today's article is all about an interesting feature of Hualien that isn't seen anywhere else in Taiwan. So why don't we get started?
Reading.
Hualien's post office on wheels. There's a big green post office in Hualien that's likely moving as you read this. That's because it's on wheels. The Yuli mobile post office is a bus, which makes it easier for people in rural Hualien to send their mail. This mobile post office is the only one left in Taiwan, and it has been running since 1988. In fact, there used to be more than 10 mobile post offices in Taiwan. However, they vanished as post office buildings became common. The Yuli mobile post office still runs, though, because of the lack of sufficient public transportation in the area. On a regular day, the bus travels 80 kilometers and provides postal and banking services to residents in 6 remote villages. The old bus doesn't have an electronic filing system, so the mailman has to write everything down by hand. The vehicle doesn't have air conditioning for Taiwan's high temperatures either. Still, the Yuli mobile post office is a cultural treasure for Hualien and popular with tourists too.
All right, today's article starts out by saying there's a big green post office in Hualien that's likely moving as you read this. All right, so we're going to find out why this big green post office is moving a little bit later, but let's look at the word as right now. So as is our grammar pattern in this article, and it's used in many different ways. Now here in this sentence, as is being used in the same way as while. Now, when we use it this way, we're showing that one thing is happening at the same time as another thing. So let's look at the sentence in our article again. There's a big green post office in Hualien that's likely moving as you read this. Now, we could also say it like this. While you're reading this article, there's likely a big green post office in Hualien that's moving around. Or we could even say it this way. There's a big green post office in Hualien that's likely moving at the same time you're reading this. Now, let's move on to a different example. We'll take a look at the 3 different ways we could use this, and as, of course, will be the first one. Sadly, we arrived at the airport as our plane was taking off. That means the same thing as this. Our plane was taking off while we were arriving at the airport. Or the same as this. We arrived at the airport at the same time our plane was taking off.
Okay, so as we're reading this article, there's probably a big green post office moving around at the same time as us. Now, I wonder why. Let's take a look at the article. It says, That's because it's on wheels. That's really interesting.
Post office on wheels.
Yeah, usually post offices are just buildings and you have to go there to mail your letters out or mail your things out. But this one, I think you have to try to like catch it while it's moving. It's quite interesting.
Maybe you just drive behind it and then you start
try
a
to
chase.
throw the letter in its van or something.
I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, but in my imagination, I think it's pretty funny. All right, well, let's find out more about this post office. It says, the Yuli Mobile Post Office is a bus, which makes it easier for people in rural Hualien to send their mail. Now, we saw the adjective mobile. So this is actually pronounced differently by some people. So some people call it mobile. Some people call it mobile. I say mobile. I don't know what you say.
I say mobile as well.
Okay. So,
but both are fine.
Yeah. So something that's mobile is easy to move around and use in different places. Now, sometimes people call their cell phones mobile phones. You might hear that a lot in the UK or Australia. And that's because they're easy to carry around with them and you can use them anywhere. So, you know, if you have a phone at your home and that's attached to a cord in the wall, that one's not mobile. You can't move it to all of the different rooms. You can't take it out of your house. But your cell phone can just go in your bag or you can carry it in your hand. So that's mobile. Here's another example. This machine is mobile so that doctors can bring it from room to room without moving their patients.
Okay, so we learned here that this post office is moving around. And why do they do this? Well, it makes it easier for people living in rural Hualien to send their mail. Now, when somewhere or when a place is rural, it means that it's more like the countryside. It's not a city. It's less developed. You do not have any tall buildings or 7-Eleven or something like that. So rural just means country, like the countryside. For example, I can say there are fewer jobs for younger people in rural areas. So there's not a lot of jobs for people if you're in the countryside. However, the opposite of this word is called urban. Okay, urban just means the city. Okay, for example, Taipei is an urban city. Okay, it means there's a lot of developed buildings. We have a lot of skyscrapers. There's a 7-Eleven at every corner. So that is an urban area.
All right. Well, that's a tough word to say, rural.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Even for English speakers, native English speakers, that word is a tough one to say. So you might have to practice that one a couple of times. All right, so we've got this post office on wheels. It's actually a van, and it goes to places in rural Hualien to help people send their mail. Maybe they can't get into the big city to do this enough. So it says here, this mobile post office is the only one left in Taiwan, and it has been running since 1988.
Wow.
So it's been around for a long time. That's 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, wow. All right, next it says, in fact, there used to be more than 10 mobile post offices in Taiwan. Okay, so I guess it makes sense. I mean, if you live in the countryside in Hualien, maybe you live farther away from the main city, so it's difficult for you to, you know, travel. Maybe it'll take you like an hour maybe to even get to the city. So
there's lots of little towns and villages in the mountains as well that might not have a post office. Maybe they do now, all right, but...
Yeah, maybe before it was even more difficult. But there used to be more than 10. Now, when we use the phrase used to do something, this means that this thing was done in the past or maybe it happened in the past, but it's not done that way anymore.
Right.
So, for example, I can say, before she started her new job, Lisa used to exercise every day. Okay, so maybe before she had a lot of time, so she could exercise every single day, but now she has a new job. She can't do that anymore, so we can use the phrase used to do something.
Right, she's too busy now.
Yep.
All right, so there were 10 of these mobile post offices, but there's only one now. Let's find out what happened to them. It says here, however, they vanished as post office buildings became common. Now, we use the word vanish here, and vanish is a verb, and it means to disappear or to stop existing completely. Now, often, but not always, this happens in a way that's sudden. So, we usually might talk about the word vanish when we see a magic trick, right? Maybe a magician has made something vanish, and it was there 1 minute, and now it's gone the next, sort of thing. But sometimes we use it to talk about something that stops existing completely, and this might happen over time, such as in this example. Now, as more and more post office buildings appeared in Taiwan, especially in these rural areas, the trucks weren't needed anymore. So people stopped using the trucks, and the trucks disappeared from the roads. As another example, we can say, the Formosan black bear has almost vanished from Taiwan.
Oh, no. So we got to do something to try to stop them from vanishing.
That's right.
Okay, so here in the same sentence, however they vanished as post office buildings became common, we see another grammar point here. A while ago, we learned as can be used like the word while or at the same time. But here, as is used in a different way. And in here, in this sentence, as is used in a way like since or because. Okay, for example, we can take a look at the example sentence in the article. However, they vanished as post office buildings became common. We can replace as with because. So we can say, however, they vanished because post office buildings became common. So both of these mean the same thing. We can take a look at another example. Jennifer took a break from exercising as her knee wasn't getting any better. And this just means the same as, or you can also use it like this. She stopped exercising because her knee wasn't doing well. Or Jennifer took a break from exercising because her knee wasn't getting any better. Okay, they both mean the same thing. There's another meaning for as well. So as is a very useful word.
It is.
As can also mean in the way or manner that shows 如同 or 和什么什么东西一样. So, for example, we can say, as you said, the traffic on the road was pretty bad. And it's kind of to say like you agree with someone, or like to say, you said something the same, or you said something similar, so you're kind of repeating what probably the other person said. So we can also mean it, we can also use as to mean with the same thing as something else.
Now, fortunately, we are not going to go through all of the meanings of as with you today because we would be here way too long. So let's move on in the article. It says next, the Yuli mobile post office still runs, though, because of the lack of sufficient public transportation in the area. Now here, we said there's a lack of something. So we're still using this van for a special reason, and that's because of a lack of public transportation. So when you have a lack of something, you do not have enough of that thing, or you don't have any of that thing at all. Now, here the article is saying that there's a lack of public transportation, right? Now, that means there aren't enough trains or buses to serve all the people's needs in this rural area. Now, if there's a lack of information, it might mean you don't have enough information to know about something. You need more information to know about it. Here's another example. Edwin's teacher has a lack of patience. She yells and gets upset at even the smallest problems.
What's also interesting here is we learned the word sufficient. Okay, so we learned that the mobile post office runs because of the lack of public transportation. But we added the word sufficient in there to give it an extra meaning. So the word sufficient is an adjective, and it means to have or provide as much as needed. And basically, it just means to have enough of something. For example, we can say the flood damaged the town, and everyone is still waiting for help. However, they need it quick because the town doesn't have a sufficient amount of food for everyone. So it means this town does not have enough food for everyone. In the same way, we can say there's a lack of a sufficient amount of food for everyone. There's another example we can say. We can say we need sufficient time to deal with the problem. So that means we need enough time. We need more time in order to solve this problem. We cannot solve it as quickly quickly as people expect it to.
Right. Okay. So probably just not very many buses or trains going into these areas, right? I doubt they have a lot of taxis up there, that sort of thing. So this van, it goes to those places and it helps them out. And it says here, on a regular day, the bus travels 80 kilometers and provides postal and banking services to residents in 6 remote villages. All right, so of course, this post office van is going to provide postal services. Now, this adjective postal talks about any services that are related to the post office and sending mail and packages.
Now, what does this bus do? Of course, it provides things that every post office offers. And they also offer postal and banking services to its residents. Now, a resident is basically a person who lives in an area or a particular place. So, for example, in your apartment building, you are a resident of your apartment building. Means you live there. You live in that specific place. For example, we can say the local residents were angry at the lack of sufficient parking spaces.
Interesting use of sufficient there. That seems to be a problem sometimes in Taiwan. So.
Especially in an urban place.
Exactly. All right. So this van, it brings postal and banking services to residents in 6 remote villages. Okay. So it goes to 6 villages on a regular day to meet the people there. And these villages are remote. Now, this adjective is used to describe things that are far away from large cities or towns or other places that a lot of people will live. Now, these villages are not close to Hualien City. Perhaps they're far up in the mountains and they're hard to get to. Now, because of these things, we say they are remote. Here's another example. My favorite place to camp is next to a remote lake in the mountains of Taiwan.
Wow, sounds so nice. All right, let's continue reading. Next, it says, the old bus doesn't have an electronic filing system, so the mailman has to write everything down by hand. Oh, man, that's a lot of work for him.
Yeah.
All right, so, I can imagine. I mean, you live in a more rural area, so it probably is a lot more difficult to use electronics. But nowadays, most post offices, they have computers. They use an electronic filing system. Let's take a look at the word electronic. It's an adjective and it means you operate things through electrical parts. So sometimes it involves things like a computer or a computer system. Okay. We also have a lot of electronic devices. Okay. Electronic devices are things that need power or even batteries. Now, for example, we have an iPhone. iPhone is an electronic device. Computers are electronic devices. CD players, video game consoles, and TVs are all counted as electronic devices because they all need some sort of power or energy source, electricity in order to run. For example, let's take a look at our sentence. We can say, I prefer to read books through electronic devices instead of on paper.
Interesting. Okay. So you might use an e-book.
Yes. Or Kindle, I think.
Right.
Some people use that.
Yeah. All right. So because this van doesn't have an electric filing system, there might not be a computer or an ATM on this van. The mailman has to do everything by hand. Now, what this means is that when something is done by hand, it's done by a person, not a machine. So that means the mailman has to write everything down using pen and paper, and that he doesn't have a computer to put the information in. As another example, we could say, before washing machines and dishwashers, people had to wash their clothes and dishes by hand. I still wash my dishes by hand.
Yeah, I do too. I don't have a dishwasher at home. All right, next, let's continue reading. It says, the vehicle doesn't have air conditioning for Taiwan's high temperatures either. Wow, that's a tough one. I really have high respects for this mailman.
Yeah.
Okay, now air conditioning. Okay, let's take a look at this word. It's very, very important for us in Taiwan, especially since Taiwan is so hot. Air conditioning is basically a system that we use for cooling and drying the air in a building or room or etc. So, for example, Taiwan has really, really hot summers. So the air conditioning is used to kind of bring the temperatures down. It keeps the air inside of the room very cool for you. For example, we can say, Taiwan is too hot in the summer. It's hard not to use air conditioning.
True.
I feel like dying whenever.
Maybe this bus goes or this van goes to the mountains and it's a little bit cooler up there.
I think so. There probably is a little bit of wind inside of the car.
Hopefully.
But still, wow.
All right. Well, despite not having air conditioner and having to do all of this stuff by hand, it says here, still, the Yuli Mobile Post Office is a cultural treasure for Hualien and popular with tourists too. Now, we often use the words cultural treasure together when we want to talk about a part of a culture that's special or interesting for some reason, and that it should be known or remembered as important. So this post office is providing really important services for people, and, it does a really good thing. It helps them keep in touch with other people in Taiwan and gets them their mail, and, it's just a fun and interesting thing to see driving around on the roads.
And the fact that it's been around for 30 years is really amazing as well.
Exactly.
So that's a lot of fun. If you do have a chance, I think you should try to catch this post office.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with our For You chat.
Okay.
For You chat.
Okay, so let's take a look at our For You chat. Our question of the day is, do you send anything at the post office? Why or why not?
I do. I actually go to the post office almost every week.
Oh, is it because you send your parents things?
I send my parents a card once a month, but I send all of my friends who live in other places a birthday card.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I wrote down all of their addresses and birthdays, and then I write them a 2 or 3 page letter, and I send them a card for their birthday.
That's actually really cute. I think I should start picking up that habit too. And it's nice to receive a letter once in a while.
It was my 2018 New Year's resolution, and I kept it. So
good job.
Yeah, I'm going to do it again this year, but that's what I do. You guys get to talk about this too. Post offices might not be as popular now with email, but you probably still use it for something. So have a chat about this with your friends and your classmates. We are all out of time. So for English for You, I'm Erin.
I'm Tiffany.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hualien's post office on wheels. There's a big green post office in Hualien that's likely moving as you read this. That's because it's on wheels. The Yuli Mobile Post Office is a bus, which makes it easier for people in rural Hualien to send their mail. This mobile post office is the only one left in Taiwan, and it has been running since 1988. In fact, there used to be more than 10 mobile post offices in Taiwan. However, they vanished as post office buildings became common. The Yuli Mobile Post Office still runs, though, because of the lack of sufficient public transportation in the area. On a regular day, the bus travels 80 kilometers and provides postal and banking services to residents in 6 remote villages. The old bus doesn't have an electronic filing system, so the mailman has to write everything down by hand. The vehicle doesn't have air conditioning for Taiwan's high temperatures either. Still, the Yuli Mobile Post Office is a cultural treasure for Hualien and popular with tourists too.
Vocabulary Review.
Mobile. Mobile phones can be used anywhere and have changed the way people communicate. Vanish. Teresa saw a beautiful deer near her house, but it vanished into the forest before she could take a picture. Sufficient. You don't need to make 2 cupcakes for every student. Just 1 per person should be sufficient. Remote. Jerry got tired of living in the city and moved to a remote house in the mountains. Electronic. If you don't have any cash, we can accept an electronic payment through a smartphone app. Air conditioning. The air conditioning in our classroom isn't working, so everyone is sweating in this summer heat.